And joining us now from the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com is columnist Jeff Duncan, our good friend, and no question head coach Joe Vitt clearly upset with the tackling early on in that Jacksonville game. What issues did you see out there?
Well, they looked a lot like this football team we saw a year ago for the first time. I think this preseason, I think it was an eye-opener for most people because we'd been all seeing what they'd done in the first two games. I thought the defense was one of the strengths of this team in the preseason. And to me, Fred, it's nothing to be concerned about, a one-time thing. I look at that game as almost like an outlier. They look like a very tired team. You know, they had 3 days of tough practices. And I think a veteran team like this, who's been through the preseason so many times, is due a mulligan. They're coming back playing a team that they should beat at home. Mm-hmm. I think there's a little complacency involved there. And, hey, let's see what happens against the Texans before we get too concerned about it, because what we'd seen prior to that, I think, is more indicative of how this defense is going to play.
No, I think you're exactly right. Overall, we've seen a lot of improvement on defense. And let's not forget, this is really basically the second preseason game they've had, not the third.
Right, and that hasn't been the case in practice. Steve Spagnuolo has talked about improving tackling, but let's face it, the new CBA rules, they're not allowed really to do much of that in practice. So it's easy to see it being a problem early on, but I thought it got better as the game went on, and really the main culprit of this was Patrick Robinson, who I think we also have to give him a little leniency because he's been out with an injury, and he's had a great preseason up to that injury. So once he got the rust out, I thought he played well.
Where are the Saints now as far as needs of improvement moving into this Texans game and, of course, the Tennessee game and then on into the regular season?
Well, the biggest issue I've seen so far is penalties. I mean, this is a team that's ranked among the league leaders in fewest penalties every year under Sean Payton, and they've been really littered with penalties in almost all their preseason games. Joe Vitt's talked about that. That's a case maybe of focus, but they need to get that really tightened up, I think, before the regular season. This is going to be a very competitive year. I think we all agree the NFC is a bear. It's so competitive that penalties and things like that can make the difference in a football game. They've got to clean that up, and I think they will. This is a team that's, like I said, a veteran team that hasn't had that history of being a penalty-prone team.
Now, I don't want to take any slack off of the Saints, but what about the officiating with these replacement officials out there, the regular officials being locked out? That's got to be a function that the coaching staff at least has to look at, don't you think?
I think everybody's got to be concerned about that. The league has to do something about this. What we've seen in preseason, I think, has not been indicative of the standards we see in the NFL week to week, and I don't think the public's going to stand for it. It's going to be an issue every week. We're going to have a game where there's a blown call, and with as heavily covered as this league is, it's going to become a distraction for the league, and I think they recognize that. They've got to get that issue solved and get these frontline guys out there. I think we're seeing just how difficult it is to call an NFL game. These are good officials for the most part, and they're struggling right now.
And you know what? At the league meetings, they were talking about the fact, well, we want to shorten the games for television purposes and all that kind of thing. These games have been interminable.
Oh, the other night, I was sitting next to Pete Finney, who's seen a lot of games in his years, and he was going crazy. No, and we all know TV schedules are dictated by the length of these games. And, yeah, it's a big issue right now. The league's got to get it done.
Back to the Saints and talking about the defense. Cedric Ellis, Cam Jordan, both of those guys have opened my eyes. They've been very much improved. Is that a function of Steve Spagnuolo's system? Yeah,
I think so, and I think Junior Gillette falls into that category as well. He has a reputation of developing defensive linemen. We've heard Cedric Ellis talk this preseason about how much he likes this new scheme. He feels like the shackles have been let off to some degree, that he's not handcuffed by the scheme. And I think we've seen it in his performance on the field. This is a contract year for him. He needs to play big. This is a guy that was a top 10 draft pick that hasn't performed to those expectations since he's been here. But I have seen much more activity from him in the middle of that line. And I think they're going to be okay on the outside. Cam Jordan in his second year, Junior Gillette with speed, Martez Wilson. Those ends, I think they've got some promise. They need somebody in the middle to step up, and right now, Cedric Ellis, I think you have to like what you see.
And those guys playing well up front have to help the secondary, the linebackers, those guys to play better and be more playmakers, right?
Yeah, and that was the problem last year. I mean, without a pass rush, the secondary can only hold up so long. And this secondary is very talented. When Jabari Greer gets back, they're going to have 4 frontline starters. And I've actually been impressed with the depth of the secondary so far. I think that's a strength of this team that's emerged in this exhibition season with Corey White, the rookie, playing very well, Johnny Patrick, Marquise Johnson. The Saints now have, I think, 5 good, solid cornerbacks. So their back end, I think, is solid. Now they've got to get that front end to do the same thing. And I think that's where Steve Spagnuolo is going to help. I think by moving these guys around, taking advantage of their strengths, they're not going to have, Fred, a double-digit sack guy on this team. I don't see one there. Right. But I think they're going to have enough guys contribute 5 to 8 sacks to where collectively they can get a pass rush.
Well, we looked at the numbers. Takeaways are key. They've had 45. They're past 35 regular season and playoff games, but they had 47 in 19 games during the Super Bowl win, so that's a key for them. They got to have that happen.
Critical, and it's the biggest function for any defense in this league. They've got to get to that point, and that could be the difference in this team. What I think critical for this team is getting home field advantage. We saw them last year, 8-0 in the Superdome, had to go on the road to San Francisco. I had that stat the other day in my column. They're 4-0 in the Superdome in the playoffs under Sean Payton. They're 0-3 on the road. Those numbers are as stark as it gets.
They kind of speak for themselves, don't they?
Yep.
All right, Jeff, stick around. We got more to get to in just a moment. Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and from the Times-Picayune.